This is the recreation of a talk that I gave to professional midwifery advocates at our national conference in October 2025. I feel it's only fair to warn you that I will be talking about some emotionally intense things to start with, but I can also promise that it will get a whole lot more uplifting by the end. Right, here we go. I have been known to exaggerate for comic effect before, but I don't need to do that in this situation. A systematic review in 2022 found that between 35% and 66% of maternity healthcare professionals had at least some symptoms of PTSD, and that between 3% and 46% of us had symptoms that were severe enough that we would qualify for an official clinical psychiatric diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, largely as a result of things that we've come across in our working lives. But most of us are tremendous actors and we don't want to let anyone down. So we put a smile on our faces and show up as best we can. We don't talk about our disrupted sleep or our bad dreams, or the days we spend lying in bed and barely moving because we just can't face the world. Or that our family members notice that we're completely distracted a lot of the time and it starts to affect our relationships. Or that we overreact at really inopportune moments, like when you're trying to get a GP appointment to check out the weird mole on your back, and the online booking portal system doesn't recognize you even though you've entered everything correctly, and then a message pops up on the screen saying it might take 48 hours for access to be granted, and the tightness in your chest feels a lot like that time you wanted to get someone to review the CTG because you could see it wasn't great, but you also knew everybody was already busy in the operating theatre, the super serious emergency, and then you later got told off for not escalating sooner, but you hadn't wanted to leave the woman alone, and now you just want someone to check out the weird mole in your back, and yes, this is my accurate date of birth, you stupid online GP booking portal system. Right? Because PTSD is for people who've been in war zones or terrorist attacks or really bad natural disasters. It's not a midwife, we tell ourselves, having a headache that incapacitates her for 3 days in a row. It's not feeling your blood pressure rise and your pulse race every time you go back to that ward where it all happened because your own working area is out of IV paracetamol and you need to borrow some. It's not wanting to crawl into a hole and disappear every time you see that member of staff that you're sure thinks you're incompetent. It's not needing to pull over on the way to work and throw up in a field driveway because you're just so tightly wound about what it is that you might face when you get there. Because you're not being shot at or having your legs blown off, right? And anyway, birth is a joyous thing, and we are professionals, right? So this can't be PTSD. Right? Unless it could. And then maybe the reason that you froze in the middle of that emergency and didn't pull the buzzer, even though you knew you needed to pull the buzzer, but you didn't pull the buzzer, even though you knew you needed to pull the buzzer, but you didn't pull the buzzer, even though you knew you needed to pull the buzzer. Maybe it wasn't just that you were terrible. Maybe you were ill or psychologically injured. And maybe it was your job that made you ill or psychologically injured. But because nobody told you it was a possibility, you didn't see it coming. That would be a terrible thing. People with mental health issues, like proper ones, like PTSD, they're broken. They probably can't make eye contact. They've got terrible posture and shuffle through life. Spend a lot of time sitting in the corner and rocking. They'll never be successful or funny or be able to help anybody or smile and have friends. And they really wouldn't stand up publicly and talk about PTSD and midwifery without looking hugely uncomfortable and embarrassed about the fact and maybe cry. Right? I personally think that 3% is too low of an estimate and 46% is probably too high. If we look at studies that just involve midwives and not maternity healthcare professionals more widely, they tend to come up with numbers between 17 and 35% of us that could be diagnosed with PTSD. If we aim for about the middle of that, that's around about 1 in 4 of us. Now expect on hearing that, some of us listening will be thinking, oh, 1 in 4, I wonder if it's her. Oh, I bet it's her. Oh, and it is definitely her. Don't worry, I'm not asking for any confessions. And on one hand, it kind of doesn't matter, because if this is happening to 1 in 4 of our midwifery sisters and brothers, it's happening to us. And I really, really, really wish that it wasn't. If you're somebody who's going through a difficult patch at the moment, or if you know someone who is, I want everyone to know this. You don't have to go through this kind of thing on your own. And I know it's really difficult to reach out and ask for support, partly because it's hard to recognize what's going on, and in part because it is terrifying to admit. And secondly, if you're somebody who has longer term symptoms who stem from past traumatic events, or if you know somebody who does, and you definitely do, I want you to know this. I don't think you're broken. I think you are brave, and I think you are strong, and I think you are magnificent. And you have a profound kind of wisdom that it will take other people a whole lot longer to come by. And I wish with my entire heart and soul and being that this is not the way things were, that it was possible for things to unfold in some other sort of way. And yet, here we are. There has been a move in the fields of psychology and psychiatry in recent years to recognize that some of the symptoms that we have following traumatic experiences aren't disordered in the way that we usually think of that word, but probably have their roots in being quite an advantage to us from an evolutionary point of view. For most of human history, we've been cave people, and it wasn't in our ancestors' interests to feel completely comfortable about going back to a part in the forest where they'd nearly been attacked by a bear or mauled by a saber-toothed tiger. And people that were completely cool about it probably didn't live long enough to pass along their genetics. Similarly, if there was a rival or a violent tribe in the neighborhood, it was a good idea to have extra cortisol circulating around your system, because that would stop you from sleeping very well, and then you'd be more likely to wake up if you were under attack and be able to fight them off, fend for yourselves. We're not built for this world that we live in, with cars and electricity and Wi-Fi. We say that we have value independence in the modern world, and we think that we do. But our ancestors who were independent or on their own tended to lead really short lives, because they didn't have somebody to help fight off that predator with them, or have somebody to look after them when they were ill, or bring them food when they'd broken their leg. We have a biological imperative to feel that we belong to the safety of a group, and we will do all sorts of things to make sure that that happens. This can make things really difficult for us when we're involved in something untoward at work, because we are concerned that if we are found to be incompetent or incapable or in some other way unworthy of belonging to that group, they're going to kick us out and we're going to die. Now, obviously, as PMAs, we've got a part to play in all of this. We can make it easier for people to opt into support by being approachable and visible and having casual conversations with others when the going is good. And then that makes it easier for people to reach out for support when the going is not so good. And it is absolutely right and fitting and proper that we shouldn't be able to compel people to seek restorative support. Like many of us, I can remember the old days of statutory supervision of midwives and being involved in something a little bit dicey and then being told, and now you need to write a reflection and go and speak with your supervisor of midwives, which I'm sure was very well intentioned, but on the balance probably wasn't the most effective thing going, and also probably caused actual harm to some people in some circumstances. But I think we can draw a distinction between that kind of situation and being able to sensitively reach into somebody in their distress and be able to have a sensitive conversation along the lines of, hey, were you involved in that thing that happened on Sunday night? That sounded awful. How have you been sleeping? And that does two things. First of all, it reassures somebody that if they have been sleeping badly, that's normal and they don't need to worry about it. And secondly, it opens that door just a little bit. So if they do want to start telling the story of what it was that happened, that first half step has already been made and it's a little bit easier. When we tell the story of something uncomfortable that happened in a safe environment, that allows us to rewrite the meaning of what had happened. On a cellular level inside of our brains, that's like going back to a part in the forest where you were nearly attacked by a bear, but this time you've got a trusty friend with you and you don't come to any harm. That might need to be a story that's told more than once and in more than one situation or more than one circumstances to different people at different times. But eventually that allows us to take out the sting of what it was that happened and reduce some of the terror that we would have otherwise associated with it. However, I do want to put a word of caution to us as PMAs out there. People that go into healthcare, and more specifically people that go into midwifery, and I have no reason to believe that PMAs would be any different as a cohort, we have a tendency to have a hyperactive sense of over-responsibility. But we need to remember that not everything rests individually on our shoulders. That's not a fair burden for us to bear. We are part of a network of support that's available for people. GPs can be a good port of call. There's certain things they can put in place themselves, but they also can make referrals for more specialist support if that's felt to be appropriate. There are workplace well-being schemes and occupational health departments. Private counselors and therapists are available. There's a specific type of therapeutic treatment that has been shown to be very well received among people who have participated in traumatic events. And that's called EMDR, or if you want to give it its full name and impress your friends and family, it stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. I haven't had this type of treatment myself, but people who have and have told me about it have said that it was almost like magic in helping to tone down their responses to different things. The Association of Radical Midwives runs something called the Midwives Haven that some people have found quite useful. The Samaritans are there 24 hours a day, and just like any other medical emergency, sometimes going to A&E or dialing 999 is the appropriate port of call. On an individual level, there are certain things that people can do. Going outside and spending time in fresh air is good for most people, and also with exposure to natural daylight. I know some times of year there's a bit more of that than others, so get it while you can, every little bit that's available. Exercise is helpful, and it doesn't need to be exercise with the capital E. Even just putting your shoes on and going to the end of the street is better than staying parked on your couch for days and days on end. And spending time with people that care about you is really important too. And I know that when you're already feeling a bit rotten inside, the idea of spending time with other people can seem a bit frightening because it makes us feel more vulnerable than we already do. But it is really important, and possibly the most important thing. In the longer term, we need to have properly evaluated evidence-based strategies to help stop these workplace injuries occurring in the first place, the same as we do for moving and handling. And we need to have properly evaluated evidence-based strategies for rehabilitation when they do occur. A conversation to get all fired up for on another day is about how there are more work days lost to anxiety, stress, depression, PTSD than to moving and handling injuries. And there are more work careers cut short due to anxiety, stress, depression, PTSD than to musculoskeletal injuries. But there's not the same type of urgency that there is, or the same parallel system for dealing with these types of injuries from the occupational hazards that we face. Like I said, that's a much longer term project. In the short term, I have a sneaking suspicion that's based in some actual theory that if we're able to talk about these kinds of things in an upfront and in a frank way, that will do something to help reduce the intensity of people's symptoms and also the duration of those symptoms. For two reasons. First of all, it will help people to recognize what's going on in themselves at an earlier stage, and they'll be able to reach out and ask for some sort of help or treatment. And secondly, people will be able to recognize that this isn't because of some sort of moral failing or shortcoming on their part, but actually this is my ancient brain trying to keep me safe, and then not feel bad about it. I'm going to change direction here for a minute. I grew up on a farm, and some of the best fertilizer for plants is manure, which often gets called by four-letter names, and with good reasons, because it is horrible. It stinks, it makes a mess, it gets everywhere, it's not nice to handle, there's nothing pleasant about it. But all of that excrement can provide the most perfect nutrition for some amazing growth and productivity and beauty. In the fields of psychology and psychiatry, there's also been a recognition in recent years that while post-traumatic stress is definitely a thing, there's also the possibility for post-traumatic growth. It doesn't always happen. It's not a guaranteed kind of thing. And it's not an either-or situation either. But post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth can happen within the same person following the same event. And it is possible. Lots of us, I think, can look back on our personal histories and think back to situations that we wouldn't have wished upon our younger selves, or we wouldn't have wished upon anybody else. But we can also recognize that they have changed us into the glorious people that we are today. My hope and my wish for all of us, whatever stages we are at in our midwifery career, is we're able to harness all of our experiences, good, bad, somewhere in between, and be transformed by them into better, kinder, more courageous midwives, and that we're able to loan that courage to other people when they need it the most. To be able to credibly say that even in those difficult times, when it feels like there are shadows everywhere and you can barely see one foot in front of the other, that in the end, things can turn out to be all right, with some time and with some care and with some love.